This training video is for our adult summer camp staff, so for our staff who are 18 and older. If you are under the age of 18, you do not need to watch this training, so you may go ahead and exit out. This is part 1 of our 2-part child protection policy training for summer camp. Our part 2 training will occur Sunday morning on site at All Saints Camp, so it's important that all of our adult staff are able to arrive on site at time for that second part of this training. Our training video today is going to overview our general child protection policy from the Sword of the Spirit and within the Pittsburgh People of God community. And then our on-site training at camp will go ahead and get into the nuances of how do we implement this policy into the schedule and into the life at camp. So to overview our goals for today and just why this policy exists, it's important to acknowledge that relationships are central to our life together in covenant community. I think and it is our responsibility that protecting the emotional, physical, and spiritual development and safety of children in our youth programs is an overriding priority in our life and mission in the Sword of the Spirit and within the people of God. And so as the adult staff, we are obligated to safeguard participation of our youth within our participation, within theirs, and within our interactions within the youth that we will serve at camp. Volunteer for People of God Summer Camp, we all must adhere to these 7 policies. So while at camp, we must exhibit the highest Christian ethical standards and personal integrity. We must conduct ourselves in a manner that is consistent with the discipline, norms, and teachings of the Sword of the Spirit. We may not take advantage of any pastoral, supervisory, and or authoritative relationship for our own benefit. We may not abuse or neglect a minor. We must share concerns about suspicious or inappropriate behavior with our supervisor immediately. We must adhere to the laws of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania regarding the reporting of suspected abuse of a minor. There'll be more information on that Sunday morning. And then we must also accept the personal responsibility for the protection of all minors from all forms of abuse while we are serving together at camp. A minor is anyone under the age of 18. So our minors at camp include our campers and our junior staff who are high school students. A child is a minor under the age of 18. A child and youth worker is anyone, paid or volunteer, who work with children and youth in community programs, services, and outreach. So all of our adult summer camp staff for the week is going to be considered a child and youth worker. And then the program director is the person or team of people designated by the community to oversee a children's program or youth ministry. And so under PA law, summer camp operates within the state of Pennsylvania. We have several definitions of abuse that we are going to review to begin our training. So abuse exists when there is endangerment of a child or youth's physical or mental health due to injury by act or omission. Abuse and neglect can include the following. Neglect includes failure, refusal, or inability on the part of a caregiver for reasons other than poverty to provide necessary care, food, water, clothing, medical or dental care, or shelter to seriously endanger the physical health of the consumer. Physical abuse includes physical injury inflicted on a child or youth by other accidental means. Physical injury includes, but is not limited to, lacerations, fractured bones, burns, internal injuries, severe or frequent bruising, or great bodily harm. Conduct qualifying as physical abuse may include, but is not limited to, hitting, spanking, shaking, slapping, unnecessary restraints, pushing, or the forceful physical contact. Verbal abuse includes language that is degrading or threatening and includes verbal interactions such as name-calling, insults, cursing, derogatory remarks, belittling, and shaming. Sexual abuse includes a wide spectrum of interactions with children or youth, including rape, certain physical assault, sexual battery, physical sexual contact, sexually explicit or offensive verbal communication, verbal sexual harassment, voyeurism, sexually oriented conversations, sexual intercourse or sexual touching of a child or youth, sexual exploitation, exposing of genitalia, viewing of sexual activity, or permitting, allowing, or encouraging a consumer to engage in prostitution. With those definitions in mind, all of our adult staff at camp will be asked to sign a staff code of conduct when they arrive on site. I'm going to review this code code of conduct now. This is a document that you will receive at our Sunday morning training that you will have time to review, to ask questions on if you do, and then we do ask for a signature on that to collect it back from you. So it starts by saying this: in accord with my role as a camp personnel and in witness to the gospel of Jesus Christ, I will conduct myself with integrity, acting in a manner that is consistent with the discipline and teachings of the Scriptures, the people of God community, and Sword of the Spirit communities. I will guide my behavior by civil law and by the policies of the people of God Child Protection Policy by respecting the rights and God-given dignity of each person and advancing his or her welfare during the course of camp. Maintaining a safe and trustworthy relationship with youth free from inappropriate behavior that would put them at risk, including, but not limited to, using, possessing, or being under the influence of drugs and or alcohol, using foul language, speaking in a manner that could be perceived as harsh, threatening, intimidating, shaming, derogatory, demeaning, or humiliating, hazing or bullying, engaging in sexual humor or conversations, being nude, possessing sexually oriented or morally inappropriate materials, being overly attentive to a particular child, giving special gifts, establishing one-on-one counseling relationships, use of technology such as cell phones, smartwatches, etc. to communicate one-on-one with a minor. 4. Reporting to proper authorities my own ethical misconduct and the misconduct of others. And 5. Being responsible for my own spiritual, physical, mental, and emotional health. So that is our staff code of conduct that we are asking each of our adult staff to abide by for the week, and we will ask for signatures on that. Some things of note, just based on the second point of maintaining an open and trustworthy relationship and working with youth. All Saints Camp is a drug and alcohol-free campus, so we cannot have any of that on site during the week. As we engage with each other on staff as adults, but particularly with our youth, we want to ensure that our behavior is above reproach. So we want to make sure that we are not engaging in any inappropriate humorous behavior with adults or with campers. We want to make sure that anything we say is coming from a place of love and is coming from a place of Scripture. We don't know the background of all of the campers that we'll be interacting with this week, and so we could be interfacing with campers who have a tougher home life, who maybe mom and dad are separated, or parents fight a lot, or maybe their home life is just an unstable situation and they are experiencing some form of abuse at home. We want to make sure that camp is a safe place for them where they are able to feel the love of Christ through all the interactions that we have with them. Giving special gifts, I like to note that one because we do have our head counselors give gifts for memorizing scriptures or maybe certificates at the end of the week based on cabin awards and things like that. That is absolutely totally fine. When we're thinking about giving special gifts, we're thinking about gifts that you're only giving to one particular camper, or gifts that are outrageous kind of in what they are. So like that would be gifting a camper an iPhone or an Apple Watch or something like that. So we won't be doing that at all this week. And we are allowed to establish one-on-one relationships with campers. That's an important aspect. It goes back to our first point of this training, that building relationships is crucial to our life together, and relationships are crucial to our life together at camp as well. We just want to make sure that we are not becoming a counselor to any of our campers at camp. And so making sure that if anything comes up that you're unsure of how to address, or you think maybe this isn't quite as black and white, making sure that you're getting advice and input from your supervisor there as needed. As well at camp, we are going to be following a rule of 3. And so it's important that as we look at our child protection policy, as the adults, we also want to be protecting ourselves, and we don't want to be putting ourselves into any vulnerable situations at camp and we're interacting with campers. We want to make sure we are taking a team approach. So all child youth workers will be following the rule of 3 unless individual interactions have been previously approved. And so ideally within this rule of 3, it would be 2 adults supervising children and youth programming at all times. However, there are situations at camp based on the schedule, based on, individual situations that arise that they may not be able to happen. And so if needed, that will then be 1 adult with at least 2 minors. And it's just an important reminder, an important thing to note here, that at summer camp, our junior counselors are minors. Even if we have a high school student who just graduated and has turned 18, then they get bumped up to our adult staff. So any of our junior counselors will be minors for the week. As with everything needed, there are exceptions to this rule. Emergency situations could arise where we are needing to respond to an injury, an allergy concern, something, within the grounds of camp, maybe weather related, that this could be an exception for. And there's also going to be exceptions in group environments. Maybe you need to give a correction to a camper, or maybe there's some news that we received from the family that we need to share with a camper. And so, when that happens, we just encourage you that these interactions, these one-on-one interactions, should occur in an open area where others could see that interaction occurring. So a great place would be your cabin porch. So if you have all of your campers inside the cabin and you need to step outside one-on-one with a camper to give a correction for language or humor or something along those lines, go ahead and do that out on your cabin porch, because at any reasonable time, anyone else at camp could go ahead and walk by there. You could do so in the pavilion if needed. That is a great open space as well. Or if you need to take somebody from the dining hall porch would be another great open area. Just using environments that are not secluded off, and so that people are walking by just as the flow of camp occurs. And so with that, right, we also understand that physical contact is part of relationships and that it's important for the development of our youth. And so appropriate physical interactions can include side hugs, shoulder-to-shoulder hugs, pats on the shoulder or back, handshakes, high fives, fist bumps, pats on the head, touching of the hands, the shoulders, the arms, your arms around the shoulders of a camper, and asking permission before touching. Something that I always have recommended to head counselors, particularly in the way that we charismatically pray together, particularly at the Gathering for Christ, is we do often like to lay hands on a camper. I think it's always great to ask first and not just assume that a camper is going to be comfortable with that. Once again, we're not sure the background of all the campers that we are interacting with for the week. And appropriate physical interactions include lanky hugs, kisses, showing affection in those isolated areas or when you are one-on-one, sitting on laps, wrestling, piggyback rides, tickling, being in bed with a child, allowing a child to cling to your leg. Any type of massage is inappropriate. Any form of unwanted affection, so whether another camper may be okay with you walking with your arm around their shoulder, if camper X is not okay with that, that then becomes inappropriate. Touching of the bottom, chest, or genital areas that is outside authorized and documented personal care assistance. We do have 2 certified nurses on our staff, but if there was ever a need for personal care assistance, they would go ahead and be involved in that, and we would assist with that process with the nurses as needed. So in that same frame, a child youth worker may not sleep in the same bed, in the same sleeping bag, or alone in a tent, cabin, room with a minor unless the adult is an immediate family member of the minor. So if you are a adult staffer who is arriving to camp Saturday and will be sleeping over Saturday night, we do at times have junior counselors arrive early who are minors. At times, based on family dynamics, campers arrive early as well. And so if that is the case, we may have to ask you, hey, we need you to sleep in this different location tonight, so we can go ahead and abide this policy here to make sure that if we do have youth in a cabin, we either have 2 adults with them or it is just an immediate family member in that cabin or in that room with that minor. Youth workers in this contact of overnight must be of the same sex as a group they are supervising. We do this really well at camp. We have our boys' hill, we have our girls' hill, with the exception of emergencies, nursing staff, and our director team. Our adult male staff should never be on the female adult staff side or the female side of camp, and then our female adult staff should not be on the male side of camp. Like I said, exceptions to that do include our nurses, our directors, and then our nighttime safety team as needed, and we'll get into more of those details on our on-site training Sunday morning. Adults will respect the privacy of children in situations such as changing clothes and taking showers. And so during that time, an adult should only intrude to the extent that the health and or safety of the minor participant would reasonably be at imminent risk of danger. Child and youth should have time to take care of personal and hygiene needs in a group setting. An adult should shower, etc., in a place away from children and youth. So we do have all those policies in place for us at camp. Within the schedule of camp life, we will go over those details of locations, timing, policies, encouragements, good recommendations of how to supervise timing well, things like that on sites. Confidentiality. This is going to be a big one. We are going to get to know the campers at camp personally this upcoming week. we're going to be in situations that we are praying for them, praying with them. And so some things, they might share some things with you that might be very personal in nature. And so it's important to remember that personal information disclosed by a minor to a child and youth worker should be held in confidence. And so, if a camper has a parent at camp and that parent comes over to you and says, "Oh, how is their week going? How is this?" Obviously let the parent know. You can share with them as you would a parent Saturday morning at our parent program. But there's anything shared in confidence there, we want to go ahead and keep that confidence of that child. However, if the minor discloses something that makes the child or youth worker think the minor may harm his or herself or harm others, the youth worker has a responsibility to report that information to someone who is responsible for the minor's welfare. The people of who you would report that to would be your camp directors, and we will go over that chain of command on site on Sunday. And as a youth worker for the week, even as a volunteer, you are considered a mandated reporter of suspected child abuse in the state of PA, which is another category of exception to confidentiality. So if a camper were to share with you abuse is happening, you would then be obligated, mandated, to report that via PA state law. And as directors, we would help you with that process and work through that with you so you would be able to do that correctly. Lastly, for this part one of our training, looking through technology and social media use. And so it's important when we think about this that we will use phones, social media, letters, and any other forms of personal communication in a way that is consistent with this child protection policy. Child and youth workers should be mindful that such forms of communication create a private setting for relating to minors and thus require careful use. Such forms of communication may only be used with parental permission, for primarily practical purposes, should be limited, not be used as primary means of building relationship, and not be used late at night. We also do not share photos or videos without parental permission. And a summer camp policy, we'll review this on Sunday as well, is that we do not allow our individual staff to post anything on social media with individual campers in the picture. As People of God Summer Camp, we get a blanket media release statement from parents, but that is released to us for marketing purposes of camp through People of God Summer Camp. That doesn't cover myself as Miss Beth posting something online, Mr. P posting something online. So we will not be sharing anything with campers in it on social media. One exception there could be, let's say you're there with your family, your younger brother is there, you take a family picture, mom and dad are okay with it, it then becomes a family picture that you are posting. Some good tips here, particularly thinking of our head counselors who will be asked to contact campers and their cabin staff prior to summer camp. When you call your camper, obviously if they are a youth, they are a child, you will be calling the parents first, talking with the parents and asking the parents, may I talk with camper X about camp? And a lot of times, I think these days particularly, it's really easy for campers or parents to put the phone on speakerphone so you can talk to them together that way. Or I always try to make sure that when I was done having a conversation with the camper, I said, hey, can you please give the phone back to mom or dad? I'd like to wrap up the conversation with them there. Head counselors, when communicating with your junior counselors, I would recommend a group chat. So I would put yourself as a head counselor, your assistant counselor, and your junior counselor into a group chat, a group email, because then you have those two adults, one minor in there, and the whole cabin can be kept on track there. And also, if you do need to talk with something about your junior directly before camp, keep it very practical. You could also add in a parent to that group chat if you wanted to go that way too. Or it doesn't hurt to ask the parent first, like, hey, I want to be able to talk to your daughter about XYZ. Is it okay if I call her directly? Is it okay if I text her directly there? So this concludes our part one of our summer camp, People of God Summer Camp Child Protection Policy training. This was a overview of the Sword of the Spirit and People of God Child Protection Policy. Like I said, our second part will happen at camp Sunday morning. That training begins at 9 a.m., so it is crucial that our adult staff are on site in time for that training. At that training, we would get into the nuances of how does this policy, how do these guidelines flow into the life of camp. So that way we are doing everything that we can to protect our minors to the best of our ability at camp. Thank you all for listening today. I look forward to seeing all of you at camp soon.